Oh, is it that time again? I'm suddenly back. It's that time again, isn't it, Nathan? It's that time again. It is time, Nathan, to address the elephant in the room. It's been the long-standing issue,
The
the
who?
elephant in the room. What?
That's a bit harsh.
Oh, hang on. Am I the elephant? You guys know I've been a little bit up and down. I've been feeling a little bit self-conscious about my weight lately.
The
I'm right here. I dialed in. You let me in.
We can barely see on the screen.
My Queensland chip on my shoulder.
You gotta get your second head out of the shot. We can see it.
No, it's. I got it removed, so now I need to have a chip on my shoulder. So I've just got something on there. It's like every Queenslander, I'm just walking around, just carrying the burden. Hey boys, how are you tonight?
Superb.
I think we are superb. You are not, in fact, the elephant in the room, Andy. But while I have you here, it's a pleasure to have you back in on the pod. There is one question. There is one question I do actually want to ask you, which is, I had to help assist or social an article this afternoon from a certain James O'Connor, who has informed us that he's been getting plenty of banter back and forth from the Reds for this upcoming weekend, in which the Reds and Crusaders will do battle in Christchurch. If James O'Connor beats the Reds, how angry will you be about it? Will you be angry about it? Do you feel like, are you nervous about the fact that Jock could suddenly do a number on his old team?
I'm not nervous that James O'Connor could do it. I'm just nervous for this fixture. Reds playing the Crusaders in Canterbury. Feel like this was the high water mark under Brad Thorne's tenure in sort of Trans-Tasman Super Rugby, was almost beating the Crusaders just before the COVID shutdown. Like, I think they were within one score right at the end. And we're like, oh, okay, we're back. We're back. It's been a long time since sort of the 2011 to 2012, 13, sort of the end of the glory days. And then it was like, okay, we're back. And then when Super Rugby sort of reunified after the lockdowns, it was, we didn't quite reach those heady heights. So I saw this fixture early, and Reds had the bye, and they've travelled to Perth, and now they're travelling as far east as the east and south as they're going to go for a while. It's like, but if they can pull this off, then I feel like if we can pull this off, then we're the real deal. If we stumble, then is it just going to be another season for us Reds fans of like, come on, guys, it's all there. Can we just please put it together? So I'm scared, man. I'm scared for Sunday. I'm more scared about Sunday than I am about the cyclone that's about to hit Brisbane for the first time in 51 years. Put it that way.
Yeah, I was about
to. This is the real fear on the weekend.
You've got a cyclone to deal with.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Priorities right. No. I gotta respect it.
What was that? Sorry, Nat?
I love that.
You got the priorities right. I love it.
That's right.
The rugby takes precedent over the fact that a Category 2 cyclone's about to hit Brisbane shores inside of 24 hours. Probably will be on your doorstep at the time of everyone listening to this. Hope you will be okay, by the way, when that in fact happens and everyone else listening too. Yeah, just I think I should kind of address that elephant in the room.
Yes,
but of course, the other elephant in the room, Nathan. There's multiple elephants in the room. It's Derby week for you and I. Please elaborate. I know you enjoy talking about this every time on the pod, don't you? Look at that fucking little smile. Look at that little prick.
I love it because, so for context, me and Nick find ourselves in a fantasy league, a little head-to-head that we've been doing for about 2 or 3 years, brought to us by pod alumni, future Spanish correspondent Jack O'Rourke. And basically,
he's talked to me. He might come back. He's talked to me. He might come back to the show. He might
come back. Holding out. So is Christmas. And basically, all you need to know about the rivalry is, well, there is none. I've played Nick 9 times. I've beaten him 9 times. He has never beaten me. He never will. And once again, we play each other this week. So put it this way. One of us is going to be very upset next week, and one of us is going to be gloating. Nick has made it very clear in other group chats that he does not care about his season. He does not care about titles. He just cares about beating me. I find that adorable.
Yes.
And given that I've got enough Reds, I've got multiple Reds players ready to go for my final game. I'm hoping to have Andy on my side, and we can get the job done and make it 10 in a row.
Well, mate, I'm going to be the Western Force in the year that you win the title. Like, you might be the Waratahs of 2014, but there was one team they couldn't beat, and it was the Western Force. I am the Force with the Honey Badger. I will defeat your fucking ass. His name is sealed with a kiss, and I'll tell you what, you can kiss my ass, motherfucker. I will take you down.
I've been told it's not a rivalry when one person just keeps winning. It's just almost just an easy buy for me.
Well, you'll see how we feel at the end of this one. But
follow our Twitter. We'll keep it updated on there. We'll post our two squads, and you can follow along.
Yeah, I like it. Actually, let's do it. Let's do that if people are keen. But let's talk rugby, because in fact rugby happened. Rugby did in fact happen over the weekend. And we find ourselves in a very interesting place right now. We have two sides, which is, of course, the Waratahs and the Reds, still undefeated. The Western Force finally went down in a thrilling clash against the Queensland Reds in Perth. And the Brumbies, who seem to be in a bit of a spot of bother. I believe Nick Hartman said that the reason I missed the podcast last week was because the Brumbies lost. I want to go on record here and say that was in fact true. I was so upset, and I clearly am not, the chip on my shoulder as a Canberran, being told off by thousands and thousands of Queenslanders is, it's palpable. I've let that become part of my soul. But let's talk about it. And first of all, we're going to kind of look ahead a little bit, because, of course, the big match this weekend is the Aussie Derby, which is the Tars and the Western Force. And I think now is a good time. We've got a bit of a question which involves both these particular teams, because, of course, the Tars, come into this with 2 wins, with a couple of wins on the board, and still to be defeated. But it's fair to say, I don't personally think, and this is where the discussion will be, is that they've kind of hit their stride yet. And by comparison, the Western Force have surprised a lot of people. Grabbing wins over the Brumbies, wins over Moana Pacifica, and of course pushing the Reds all the way to the end, if not for kicking the ball away in the last 2 minutes, which just, God, for the life of me, my tips, that really fucked me over. And Christy Doran gave me hell about it. Thanks a lot, Christy. So, gentlemen, the question is, are both these sides the real deal this year? And Andy, as our resident Queenslander with a chip on the shoulder, I actually really want to hear your opinion first on this particular situation as these teams prepare to do battle.
The Force are my second team, though. I heard the shout out. Thank you. Heard the shout out on the pod last week. Yeah, with my youngest brother lives in Perth, and I cannot abide the Waratahs. The only time I've ever cheered for the Waratahs was that final against the Crusaders, and I felt disgusted with myself. But I would rather see the Crusaders lose than anything else. So yeah, Force are my second team. Hey, look, yeah, they're good, man. They've had a great start to their season. They probably should have beaten the Reds last week. Just one moment of indecision, and then the Reds risked it all and got it done. They've got to. Darcy Swain with the silly arm, just classic him. Which I think they were already under a penalty advantage anyway. But the Force look different this year. There just seems to be something brewing over in the West. The Waratahs are. I don't think they're the real deal. They haven't shown they're the real deal. They've got an amazing squad, an incredible just bank of players there, and it seems to be that they're just falling over the line a little bit. Moments of brilliance, just these little bits of luck that are going their way. And I think if they put it together with the squad they've got there, if they put together a polished 80-minute performance, we wouldn't be going, oh, they beat Fiji with a late penalty try. They'll be blowing teams off the park. Like, they are almost a test level side with their squad they've got there. So I don't think they're the real deal. I don't think they've shown us that. Whereas I think the Force almost in some ways. I mean, beating the Brumbies, they were great, especially after squandering the lead and then coming back. I think they have shown that they're the real McCoy this year, more so than the Waratahs, who have not lost a game, but hard to lose a game when you've just got that much talent around the park. If that answers your question at all.
So I'm going to build off that because I think there's a good point there in the sense of, yes, we don't know if the Waratahs are the real deal yet, but honestly, I don't think it matters at this stage. The reality is they're still winning. And that, I think, should be the most concerning thing for other sides. You're right. This team should be blowing, Drew and Highlanders off the park and had chances too. I think Dan McKellar said after the game he was disappointed with the way that they didn't. I think they were up 12 or 14, were on the drawers line, and then all of a sudden it just unraveled from there. So they've beaten these opportunities to blow teams away, but just haven't. But ultimately, this is what comes with new coaches, new combinations. And it's been said 1,000 times around Daisy, it feels like, but these are the games they lost last year. People forget they were a penalty away from beating the Blues. I think a penalty away from beating the Highlanders. Tane Edmund had a drop goal to beat Fiji in Fiji. This is the difference in that side. And you're right. Once those combinations come together, they're going to be real contenders. It's the joy of this sort of start of the season is it doesn't have to be. They don't have to be the real deal yet because they're still winning. If they were 1-1 or 0-2, that's sure, different situation. And let's face it, they could very much be if one or two bounces of the ball didn't go their way. But they're ultimately they're 2-0. They can sort of go through this pace building, and by the time say the Reds roll around next week or the Brumbies in 2 weeks, they're going to be a month into their season, with a lot more continuity behind their back and sort of ready to fire. So I think it's a kind of almost a good thing that you can sit as a Waratahs fan and be like, all right, we're 2-0, but I'm still nowhere near Southside as what I've seen. I know there's still levels to sort of reach in our game.
The Reds are going to come and bitch slap you guys.
In round 5.
Because we'll click too. The Reds will click too. That's the other thing with the Reds.
Kids round. Yeah.
It's a long trail back from Christchurch after the Perth trip. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, the Reds have not been given an easy draw, have they? Again, just this conspiracy against the Reds that Nick and I were talking about before you came on.
I love that you're grouping me in here. Like, oh yeah, he agrees. He agrees that there's a conspiracy.
Oh no, I didn't say you agreed with it. You've already listened to my rant about it. Already listened once tonight.
You didn't say no, so that counts as agreeing with him.
That's right.
It's not hold up in a court of law.
Yeah,
it's good though. It's good that we're talking about the Australian teams that are winning and going like, oh, imagine if they got their shit together and played at the level we thought they. I mean, the Reds bombed a couple of tries against the Force, so we're winning games and going, but guys, it could be better. We're not just fluking these wins and going, well, that was a lucky get out of jail. We're like, shit, we should have done better than that. We should have piss-wiped those guys. It's been a great season, and it's been a great season for the Australian team, despite the fact the Brumbies have, on paper, been a bit ordinary. But they pushed the Chiefs. They were within a score with a couple of minutes to go. They beat the Drua in Fiji. They're the first Australian team to do that. And then, holy shit, the Force beating the Brumbies. You can't say that. You couldn't say that the Brumbies played. It's a misstep to say that the Brumbies played poorly, and that's why the Force won. Like the Force won it.
100%. And there's an important sort of note there that the Fiji win was amazing, and the only Australian team to do that, but they still remain. So I think the record is 0-3 for teams that have beaten Fiji backing up the next week. And ultimately, you look at that game against the Force, and they came out and looked horrendous in the first 20, 25 minutes. And they're going to get Valentini back. They're getting Felawati back this week. Nalesio comes back next week. There are troops to come back in this Brumbies side. So, there's still confidence there. I'll say, Nick, as a Brumbies fan, are you still confident? Or?
Yeah, so okay, all teasing, all jokes aside about me being the chip on the shoulder, one-eyed Brumbies fan that I'm so well known to be. Do I have panic stations yet as a Brumbies fan? No, because first of all, I mean, if I separate my Brumbies brain from my Wallabies Australian rugby brain, the season that is unfolding in front of us is what I want to see. How good is it that probably I would make the argument that the best match, the Force Reds game, was a genuine contender for match of the round last week, because all those teams are playing with a level of intensity that seems really noticeable, either on par or in some cases even a little bit beyond some of the Kiwi matches. Like definitely compared to some of the Highlanders games that I've seen, or even the Blues, who have been a little bit off before their win over the Hurricanes. All of the Australian sides are playing with a much higher level of match intensity. And I want all the teams to be competitive. Yeah, the Brumbies can be on top of the ladder and have done really, really well for the last few years, but you got to earn that. And I feel like we're in a situation now where every other team is like, well, we're all setting a good standard here. You have to match up. Contrary to Andy's belief that the Reds have a tough draw to start off the season, I've said that draw. No, the Brumbies have the toughest draw to start off the season, with like back-to-back matches against the Chiefs and the Blues in New Zealand, an away match against Fiji. Like it's the three toughest places to win in the first 4 weeks. That's a horrific start. That is a horrific start to the season. And to throw in that. You disagree, Natho? Do you reckon they haven't got the hardest start? I can see you shaking your head.
No, what I was trying to say is that I was agreeing with you. It's a mental start, like in terms of what's been asked from the first month. I mean, look, I love that you guys complaining about how draws are so hard. Guys, we have to go to the Reds once in the first 6 weeks. Someone think about us Waratahs fans. It's tough. We have to play the Highlanders and the draw.
I know. It's week 4 and you're still at home. It's still week 4 and you're still at home, you lucky boy. Like, Jesus Christ.
I mean, the reality is, it's the Waratahs draw. Yeah, the Brumbies have I reckon the Brumbies and Reds have the two toughest starts to the year. But in terms of finishes to the year, the Waratahs have the worst by far. So this is sort of the time for the Waratahs to bank wins. While for the Brums, as you sort of alluding to, it's not panic stations yet. They're going to have such a easier run of fixtures where they can get wins and get back into that top 6.
And I also don't mind that questions are being asked of them early right now. Like, the big things that I've really noticed is there's a lot of cohesion issues in the back line, particularly a couple of those tries kind of against the Force. There were particular moments where you could see, like, Len Ikitau looking at a couple of his counterparts. I think it was either Ollie Sapford or... it might have been, was it Corey Toole? Did Corey Toole play that game? And he was like, there was clearly a misread between... in terms of the back three and the back line, and they were like, what the hell was going on there? So clearly teams have done their homework on the Brumbies, and teams have done their, and kind of like trying to find ways to pick it apart. It's up to the Brumbies now to actually respond and produce something there. And to your point, I actually think, I believe the Brumbies have a bit more of a shot this weekend against the Blues, who have 13 players out injured. And arguably their best player in Hoskins Sotutu just on the end copping a suspension for 3 weeks.
Do they have 13 of their All Blacks, though, so now they only have their other 15 All Blacks available for selection? They've got it. It's incredible over there.
They do have...
if this was the Kiwi podcast, I think we would be talking about what's going on at the Blues. Why have they been losing games with their squad? They are the equivalent of the Waratahs in Australian Super Rugby for the last few years. Like, how can you have the entire Wallabies team if you can't win a club game?
It's so true.
It's facts. I can't argue.
I'm sorry, Natho. It's 100% true. I think so. I've got the list up here. So they've got Sotutu out, Dalton Papali'i out, PJ Schleck out, Stephen Peferetta out, Ben Aki is out, Sam Darry is out for the whole year. He's done his shoulder really badly. So there's like 4 or 5 All Blacks out there, plus
At least, yeah.
like some decent backups in PJ Schleck and Zahn Sullivan and Kurt Eklund. So like they do have. I mean, obviously they've got talent coming out of their arseholes over there, but like it's still like it's still notable the people they have out. I would still back them to win that game because Eden Park is such a graveyard for Australian sides in general. But I do back them a little bit more than against the Blues than I do against the Chiefs, because the Chiefs, I mean, have not dropped a game yet. Looked really, really good, and I think the Brumbies were quite competitive against the Chiefs for pretty much most of that match. So there's not to say that they won't ask questions. I think. I feel like we've kind of nailed the Tars a little bit. Like we know they're both kind of like we get it, and personally, I think it's more a reflection on this is where we thought they were going to be. Any Tars fans who thought, oh yeah, this is our year, no, you were wrong. You were always wrong. It was always going to be a year of improvement, and if you can squeak into finals, that would be a successful year. Personally,
whoa, that is not the point I'm making. That is, this is still our year. Still our year.
No. Before we dive into, I think the team that I'm quite most interested to talk about in terms of the Reds, I do want to ask one final question about the Western Force, which is, I think when it comes to the Australian teams, we can all come to an agreement. They've surprised us the most. I think it's fair to say that all of us expected us to come in here and be the worst performing Australian side. I myself, in my season preview, I said in a year where every single team has got loads and loads of quality, the Force have quality, but they're probably still going to finish down the bottom of the ladder. And I feel like I'm horrendously wrong about that already, because the team is playing. I think you nailed it last week, Natho, by saying they've got a team full of dogs, lots of dogs. So are the Force the real deal? Serious question.
Yeah, I think they are. I think like the reality is they've just built a perfect team. It's very well balanced. Like I say, I think they were missing maybe 3 or 4 quality players last year that they've now all of a sudden picked up. When you look at Champion de Cresney's one of those just coming in there at flanker. I think he was great. It's been great the past couple of weeks. You then have the comments of Kyle Dezano and Hamish Stewart coming back from their first taste of rep experience. And then you just add a bit of quality on the wing like a Dylan Peach. I think we were saying towards the back end of last year, like that's what they were missing, was just that finishing ability plus maybe 1 or 2 tall forwards like de Cresney or Darcy Swain, who's been excellent as well. So I think it was, I think as I sort of alluded to last week, it was a case of just having those quality players over big name signings. And it's more having those people complemented around a settled coaching staff, a settled spine, rather than what the Waratahs have had to put together, which is basically completely new systems under completely new players and playmakers. So, I think they're the real deal, and I think they've shown that they're a dangerous team that can win both at home and away, which is again what was one of the big question marks and red flags around them.
Do you think they'll win this weekend?
No, I've still got to go with my heart. I've never said this.
I was expecting more discussion there.
No, ultimately my bias will take over. In all seriousness, I think the Waratahs scrum was particularly impressive against Fiji and Jura. I think they put a lot of pressure on him in that regard. The Waratahs, particularly the work of Parecki and having sort of Ben Grant now on the starting side, can negate what Swain and Williams bring to that line-out game. And then if you can just sort of get those backline threats flowing a bit more, your Kellaways, your Jorgensons, your Lancaster of the worlds, like all it's going to take is a couple of those passes start to stick, and I think they're going to be onto something. I think this is, I'll call it now, I think this is a big Jake Gordon game. I think he really shows up for him and sort of lifts the occasion of playing Nick White in the Battle of the Nines. So I'm looking forward to seeing it, but I think the Force will be everyone's sneaky pick to win this game. You know, like a consensus upset pick if that's a thing. But I think the Waratahs have too much class, and this is where you start to see a bit more of it come together and a win.
Yeah, be interesting to watch, and definitely an interesting game to look at. Well, Andy has just returned. His phone temporarily overheated, so he's now joined us back on the computer with his beautiful Reds cap on. And I think now is the time for us to talk about the last match of the round, which is, of course, the Queensland Reds, who are the other undefeated Australian side. They're heading over to Christchurch. Can they replicate the antics of last year, breaking that duck? I believe they've got 8 or 9 players out due to injury. The big losses this week are Sarah Uru and Josh Fluke. Which is a bit of a...
I must have missed that. But hang on, we get Liam Wright, Wallabies captain, back. So
yes, you should. I reckon you'll be fine in the loose forwards capacity. The question is more around the centres, which is always
both centres we've lost now.
Yeah, Paisami and Fluke now both out. Do we think this particular match, if the Reds come together and put together a really strong performance, not necessarily like you're going to put a bonus point win on the Crusaders in Christchurch, I don't think we should be that optimistic, even despite the injury issues that the Crusaders have, which are quite well documented at the moment. But if the Reds put in a good performance here, is this an indication of contender material? Are we like, okay, we need to take them seriously as a title contender? Andy?
Like I was talking about before, this is kind of the high water mark that to the organisation, to the fans. If the Crusaders play a better game than us and beat us, like if we go there and get beaten, we'll have to say, okay, you've got to acknowledge when a team beats you. Like there's losing and there's getting beaten. If the Reds go and lose, I don't want them to say, oh, but they played good. No, go over there and just beat those guys. Okay, just go and do it. Like it can be done. They're not immortals. You can defeat these guys. And then if the Reds can grind out a win, just find a way to get it done like they did against the Force, like the Waratahs did against the Drog. But if Canterbury just don't show up and Queensland just basically have an opposed training run, you go like, well, that doesn't really tell us anything because obviously they didn't show up. But if Canterbury should win and don't, like Queensland in Perth, like they probably shouldn't have won that game. You'd probably look at that on replay and go, well, they found a way to get it done. They won ugly. I think there's definitely something in that. Like we want good games because we want the game to be enjoyable to watch. But I would probably be happier with the Reds just winning this weekend when they shouldn't, rather than being not show ponies, but blowing them away. I don't think. If that all makes sense.
Absolutely.
No, it does.
I think ultimately we're at the stage of the Red cycle where you can't no longer be like, oh, they're a building side. They've got all these young pieces. Like, yeah, your centers are young with Dre Pacquiao and an inexperienced Filippo Dangunu playing that position, but ultimately, and Massimo DeLuda starting. But ultimately, this is a core which is now hitting its peak. And if you're gonna make runs for titles or make runs for semi-finals, these are the type of wins you look back on and go, oh wait, how good was that win against the Crusaders? How that set up our season. That really gave us the confidence. Like, you need victories like this to really sort of, as you said, establish yourself as being legit, establish yourself as being that side which can go over to places overseas and win comfortably and get that confidence. You look at the Reds preseason and it's been built around learning how to win overseas. You look at games in Tonga, games in Japan, games in UK, like this is what they've sort of been practicing for. And this is the Force was a real test of that, and they found a way to do it in trying conditions. This is a completely different challenge, trying to back it up in a whole nother level to do it again against the Crusaders. They showed they had the magic last year, but if they can do it again this year, it's going to be even more special, I reckon.
The 2010 Red season was marred by what could have been. I think it was they still had the South African teams in the competition. And I remember, going to the pub with the boys at 11 o'clock to watch the match. The 2010 season, the Reds were marred by bonus point losses. Within a converted try of winning 6 or 7 of the games they lost, and then 2011 they put it together and won
on the whole thing. So you're right. These ones you look back on and just we got that win when we probably shouldn't have, or that's the game we dropped that we probably should have won. And I know it's only round 4.
Yeah, it's the right problem to have. But yeah, I think
it's a great point though.
Yeah.
And look at the Waratahs last year. Look at the Waratahs again. If they beat the Drua early, they beat the Highlanders early. Who knows what would have happened that season? They would have been 3-1 at the same point when they were. Yeah, they would have been, I think, 2-1 or 3-1 with wins over the win over the Crusaders, who at that time we didn't know we were going to have the season they were. So absolutely, it could be a massive game that can decide the season one way or another.
Yeah, I reckon it's a very critical match. I hope that things like, there's been so much this particular week about Cyclone Alfred and the impact that so many events at the actual, in Brisbane have had to be cancelled. Players have, there's been a whole bunch of back and forth about the player welfare aspect of that. And of course, that's also extended to the Reds. So I'm hoping that won't affect the players too much. And hopefully that means that everything will be okay when it comes to Brisbane. But yeah, it's definitely going to be a match to watch, and hopefully that they can really kind of, use that moment and galvanize something special out of that, because they definitely have the capital to win again in Christchurch, particularly. And you need no further look than the fact that the Crusaders have really, they've got a couple of returning players. The most notable one being Cody Taylor. They are really pulling out all the stops to try and win this game. And with good reason, I think, and that's a good indication of the quality of the threat that the Reds pose. So it's definitely going to be one to watch. And it's the right problem to have if you're a fan. It's the right problem to have. We'll finish off by talking about another competition which has just started, which is Super Rugby Women's, which we talked a little bit about in last week's pod. Natho, I know you and I have been doing a lot of talk and a lot of chat about it. First of all, commiserations about the Waratahs. I mean, I know you and I both, talked about how we knew that the gap had firmly closed and that players had left the Tars and that injuries had cruelled them. But I didn't realise how notable it was and how much the next generation needed to step up until that game started. And the Drua scored inside of 8 seconds.
7.
7 seconds. Was it official? Was it 7 officially?
Officially, yeah.
First of all, I mean, God, also that the amazing draw that took place in the West between the Force and the Brumbies, who look red hot. And the one thing that really stood out to me is a key thing that I know Joe Yap has been trying to work on, and it's been a massive hindrance for Australian rugby, and that is the physicality. The girls beat the snot out of each other, mate. Like, they looked hard. They looked really, really strong in terms of their physical conditioning, which, I always notice the difference between like a Black Ferns, for example, and a Wallaroos, because the Black Ferns girls, their physicality was so much stronger, which is why they could dominate so much. But it felt very different looking at these games.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking to Jo at the season launch, she mentioned that most players, if not every player, had reached some kind of PB or were at their best, close towards their test levels for fitness and all those key metrics they look at. And yeah, it was clear to see. Like, this was 2 really exciting games. In terms of the Waratahs, I'm not as concerned as everybody else. And again, caught my bias, but I think what you saw was a team that was, again, and you rightly put, there was a lot of players who were sort of asked to step up from a next generation, but ultimately it was a Fijian side that was red hot and just caught them off the back foot instantly. And I think so people have seen this week's team list, a lot of those issues they had will change. I think their issues, up front and scrum-wise, they were awful. But the return of Britt Merlo and getting Adi Talakai playing more minutes will help fix that. They lacked direction as an attacking. Like, Katrina Bracco is an amazing 12, but she's not a 10. So Arabella McKenzie coming into that slot fixes it nicely after recovering from her HIA. And then getting the quality of Piper Duck and Desi Miller just to sort of add that sort of explosiveness, the added physicality that Piper brings in there, the more X factor that Desi has on that wing there. It's going to solve a lot of issues as they prepare for a 4 side, which you rightly said were very good against the Brumbies. But yeah, I'm not. I think all around the quality's lifted. Again, very impressed with what the Brumbies delivered, and I think it's going to continue to grow as we sort of start seeing the sevens players come in with your Tegan Levi's, your Belanassas, Carly Henwood's on the bench for the Reds this week. Charlotte Kazalik will likely join him next week, and what I'm hearing potentially for the rest of the year, which could be exciting. And then Tia Hines going down playing 10 for the Brumbies in that Panana Pacifica game. So you just sort of come in excited about the quality, knowing that it's just going to keep getting better and better, which is really exciting and encouraging in a World Cup year.
Yeah, I'm really, really excited by that. I think, as much as it is, as the Tars, I think we'll kind of let it pretty much on the back foot for the majority of the match against the Drua. There was a point where this was going to happen. And you could see the big difference. I think Arabella McKenzie's going to have a massive difference coming into that side and making it directing affairs, just because it was clear that the lack of experience in terms of directing the park around was noticeable. Interesting to me that I reckon these players coming back couldn't have come at a better time for them, to be honest, because the Force look phenomenal in terms of their squad. The only big notable loss is Michaela Leonard, Wallaroo captain, who I think has suffered a collarbone injury. But they've got a Blackfern Beatapsel coming in to fill that gap. So they'll be fine. They'll be completely fine, which gives a sense of things. But
joy of depth.
I'm so excited.
It's now around. Yeah. The teams now have depth. It's great.
I know it's kind of been the universal question of which team is most likely to bring a Super Rugby title west, and I genuinely believe the women's Force side are a shot in 2025. But in saying that, and this will make Andy happy, it will be. I'm so excited to see what that Reds side produces in Lautoka. Fun fact: since joining the competition, across all venues they've played at in Fiji, the Drua have only lost once, which was last year against the Waratahs when they lost 61-21, when they got flogged that time. I can see another side beating the Tar. I mean, I know the Force have, and I know the Reds have pulled off, I think, one victory against the Drua. And I think the Rebels actually pulled off in their final match, pulled off a win over the Drua as well. I can see it happening with this side because Kapani's in that side, Morgan's in that side, a lot of Wallaroos are in that side, and then you throw in those 3 sevens players off the bench. This might be one of the most exciting games to watch this weekend.
At 11 a.m. for us East Coast Elite time, so that's great.
Oh, I know. Yeah, you can. If you are in the West, you can get up, literally wake up, and the rugby's already started. Wake up at 7:30, 8 a.m., have that morning coffee, and you're pretty much set for the rest of the day.
Just love that.
It's exciting to watch. It's really, really cool to keep an eye on. I feel like we've nailed that pretty well. Andy, are you still with us? I know your internet has been kind of intermittent back and forth. Thanks to Alfie. Is he still battling the cyclone?
I think I'm still here. It's just me and my laptop being thrown about 300 kilometers inland, but I hope you can still hear me.
Well, I reckon there's a lot of rugby to be excited for this weekend. As a final thought, feeling, opinion, last elephant in the room to ask, and that is, you've got Les Kiss here, you've got playing in Christchurch, you've got everything you want. We kind of had talked about how James O'Connor originally was talking about. I know bringing it up again makes you go, "Oh my god, what the hell?" Apparently, over the course of the 3 weeks he's been in Christchurch, he's gone from "Why have we got an Aussie here?" to an absolute fan favorite, and he was having Maccas with random Kiwis at 2 a.m. Are you jealous?
On brand for him.
You're not wrong. Not wrong. Are we happy for James O'Connor in general? Yeah, I like. Ultimately, the Reds are in a better situation for him going, in the sense of it now gives Harry McLaughlin-Phillips a chance to start against the Crusaders this weekend, which is ironic. But ultimately what you needed was a bridge mentor type player for 1 or 2 years for HMP and Liner, just to sort of learn the tricks of the trade. But now it's their time to sort of experience it themselves. And ultimately this is the sort of necessary move that needed to happen. Now, I would like to see Connor come back into Australian rugby. I would see him in coaching pathways, particularly that AUNZ game in July. I think he could be a great sort of sub off the bench, or even you're looking for a 12 to sort of fill a hole. But yeah, it seems like a win-win for both parties with him going to Crusaders. And as you've sort of pointed out, he's become loved by him.
I hope it also, he kind of talked about the idea that he thinks that more Australian players should play in NZ, and that there's actually a benefit for teams to have players that move across ways and still be eligible for international honours. I think if he continues down the route that he is, I think there's it kind of is a growing case for it. It just seems like an absolute no-brainer. If you're playing in the same competition, you should still be eligible. So many other competitions do it. European leagues do it. The NRL does it. It's literally a competition in your local neighborhood, in your local part of the world. And it certainly would make things a lot more interesting to suddenly see, Damien McKenzie, if he suddenly decided I'm going to go suit up for the Western Force, but I can still be eligible for the All Blacks, to suddenly happen. I mean, God, if that was to suddenly actually happen, Jesus. But I definitely think just from that standpoint, seeing how these players can actually not only come over from another place they're originally known for, but actually do really, really well. Definitely one to keep a watch on.
I know we've had a couple of players in recent years go over and play NPC in New Zealand. And just to name drop if I can, Angus Scott Young used to literally live around the corner, and I just bumped into him one day down at the local basketball court, and I was just chatting to him about his experiences over there, and he was just raving about it and just how much he was not that it's a better system or anything else like that. It was just a different take. It was just a different environment to be in. It was just more rugby too. And I know Tane Edmed went over as well, and I think he came back sort of saying it's more high level football. It's more structured football. Whether that, we sort of want to protect, I suppose, our franchises in Super Rugby. But you were right about how James O'Connor's tenure with the Reds has been good and useful, but it's the fact that he has moved on now. It gets the baton, it does get handed on to HMP and Tom Liner. And I was at that Moana game 2 weeks ago, and Tom Liner he controlled that joint and kicked 7 out of 7 from all over the place in the drizzle, which is something that has been missing in Australian rugby. Is you can just practice thousands of kicks at goal. You should be kicking 90+%. Your kicker should just be able to kick them from everywhere in all conditions under all levels of fatigue. There's no reason to just not continually practice that.
It's definitely one to watch, and whether James O'Connor comes back as a coach or indeed can be seen as this is a potential, sets a precedent for this could actually potentially work in terms of the growth and continued improvement of Super Rugby Pacific as a product. We will not know until time will tell us. But hey, tell us what you think, any of our listeners. Tell us if you think that this is a good idea, if we should kind of open the floodgates and see more All Blacks coming to Australia and more Wallabies going to NZ. Do you think it could work off the back of James O'Connor having a surprisingly good start at the Crusaders and kind of being increasingly regarded more warmly by the Canterbury crowds? I reckon that does us for this week. When we return next week, Nick or Nathan will be very, very upset. And we'll address the elephant in the room there once again. He's saying 10. He's saying 10. Your line ends here. Do you know what they say, Nathan? Records are made to be broken. Records are made to be broken.
Funny.
Oh, you all talk, and then all of a sudden it all changes. It'll flip on a dime. We will find out.
I'm all talk. I'm all talk with the perfect record. That's all talking they do. Speaks for itself. Don't
Either
say
way,
anything.
either way, I'll see you on the app this weekend, Nathan Williamson, and I'm going to take your ass down. And for all of our listeners, you will know who won within the next minute of the next podcast next week, when it becomes abundantly clear who is happy and who is sad.
I feel like whoever wins should dial in wearing like a Hungry Jack's kind of crown.
We can source it like that. We got to find something. We got to think of a forfeit or some kind of crown. We need some royal gear or some kind of crown for the winner. I say we'll try and source something for next week.
I've got a Super Mario hat. Does that count?
Yes,
something ridiculous. Or embarrassing yourself on camera. You have to make the person who loses has to wear something stupid. Anyway, we'll figure that out when the time comes. You can check that out on YouTube. Whoever checks it, listens to our podcast there. But for all of our listeners, thank you so much. We hope you enjoy your rugby this weekend, and we'll catch you the next time around.